You brought what to Interspecies Academy? Principal Zixtal's antenna twitched in what Thomas recognized as the Arxian equivalent of raised eyebrows. A cat, Thomas repeated, trying to maintain his professional demeanor, despite the growing chorus of alarmed chittering from the assembled alien faculty. It's bring your pet to school day, and I brought my cat. The small orange tabby sat primly in her carrier, watching the proceedings with typical feline indifference. Thomas had known bringing Marmalade might raise some eyebrows, or antennae, or sensory stalks, depending on the species, but he hadn't expected quite this level of reaction from his colleagues. But that's a predator, squeaked Professor Nintick, their crystalline form vibrating with distress. An actual Earth predator, in a school. Thomas sighed. He'd been teaching xenobiology at the Interspecies Academy for 3 years now, and sometimes he forgot how differently other species viewed Earth's fauna. To him, Marmalade was just a lazy house cat who spent most of her time sleeping in sunbeams and begging for treats. To his alien colleagues, she might as well have been a miniature tiger. She's completely domesticated, he assured them. Cats have lived alongside humans for thousands of years. She's literally afraid of her own shadow sometimes. As if on cue, Marmalade yawned, showing off her impressive array of teeth. Several faculty members took an involuntary step backward. The children will be arriving soon, Principal Zixtal said, their antennae now curved in what Thomas recognized as their species' expression of deep concern. Perhaps it would be best if you took your pet home. With all due respect, Principal, the whole point of this day is cultural exchange. How can we expect our students to learn about different species if we're too afraid to even show them a house cat? The principal's exoskeleton clicked thoughtfully. They had always been a progressive administrator, which was why Thomas had chosen to teach here in the first place. After a moment, they nodded. Very well, but you must keep it contained in your classroom, and I want at least 2 security drones present at all times. Thomas managed not to roll his eyes. Of course, Principal Zixtal. As he carried Marmalade's carrier to his classroom, he couldn't help but smile at the way other teachers pressed themselves against the walls to let him pass. You'd think he was walking around with a xenomorph instead of a slightly overweight tabby cat. The real fun began when his first class arrived. The students, ranging from species that resembled floating jellyfish to what looked like sentient plant life, crowded around Marmalade's carrier with a mixture of terror and fascination. Is it true they can see in complete darkness? Asked Blip, one of his luminarian students whose own bioluminescent form provided a constant soft glow. Well, not complete darkness, but they do have excellent night vision, Thomas explained, carefully opening the carrier. Marmalade strutted out, tail high, and immediately began exploring the classroom as if she owned it. Several students gasped. Their movement algorithms are so efficient, observed PAM, a mechanical student whose species had achieved synthetic consciousness centuries ago. The way it optimizes its path through 3-dimensional space. And look at those retractable weapons, exclaimed Frond, a mobile fungal colony who served as the class president. No wonder humans became the dominant species on their planet with companions like these. Thomas tried not to laugh. Actually, it's more like cats chose to live with us because we provided food and shelter. They're independent creatures. We didn't domesticate them so much as they decided to tolerate us. The morning proceeded surprisingly smoothly. Marmalade, true to her species, spent most of it sleeping on Thomas's desk, occasionally deigning to let students observe her more closely under his supervision. She seemed particularly interested in the Luminarian students, batting playfully at their trailing tendrils of light. Everything was going fine until lunch period when the inevitable happened. The Academy's pest control system malfunctioned. The first sign of trouble was a high-pitched mechanical whine, followed by the distinctive sound of several hundred maintenance panels sliding open throughout the building. Thomas had just enough time to think, oh no, before chaos erupted. The Academy, like most modern buildings, was maintained by swarms of miniature cleaning robots. Usually they emerged at night to sweep corridors and repair minor damage. Someone had apparently messed up the scheduling algorithms, releasing them during peak hours, and they immediately began treating Marmalade as an unauthorized organic presence that needed to be removed. What followed would later be described in the official incident report as an unprecedented display of Earth Predator combat capabilities. What actually happened was that Marmalade, startled by the approaching swarm of cleaning bots, did what cats do best. She created absolute havoc. The security drones, programmed to respond to any rapid movement, activated their containment protocols. This only served to spook Marmalade further. sending her bouncing off walls and across desks with the kind of agility that reminded everyone why cats were apex predators on a small scale. "Remain calm," Thomas shouted as his students scattered. "She's just scared." But Marmalade was beyond scared. She had entered what Thomas's grandmother used to call the zoomies, that state of feline frenzy that could turn the most dignified cat into an orange blur of chaos. She ricocheted around the room like a furry pinball, sending cleaning bots flying and security drones spinning in confusion. The worst part? His students were recording everything. PAM's internal cameras whirred as they tracked Marmalade's trajectory. Processing. Earth feline achieving speeds of approximately 40 kilometers per hour in enclosed space. Updating previously stored data on biological movement capabilities. The precision! Franz Spores glowed with excitement. Did you see how it calculated that ricochet off the light fixture? "Attention all students and faculty," the Academy's AI announced over the speakers. "Please remain in your classrooms. We are experiencing a code orange, uncontrolled Earth predator situation." Thomas buried his face in his hands. He was never going to live this down. The situation reached its peak when Marmalade, pursued by a determined squadron of cleaning bots and increasingly frustrated security drones, made a break for the ventilation system. One perfectly timed leap took her through a ceiling panel, and suddenly the entire Academy was playing host to what would later be termed the Great Cat Chase of 2285. "I can track her through the building's sensor network," PAM offered helpfully. "She's currently in the cafeteria, now the library, now the administrative wing." With each location update, fresh screams and the sound of falling objects echoed through the building. Thomas could only imagine the scene. His supposedly docile house cat terrorizing the entire school, while cleaning bots and security drones caused even more chaos in their attempts to catch her. "We have to help her!" Blip's bioluminescence had shifted to worried purple. "She must be so frightened." Thomas nodded grimly. "You're right. But we need a plan. PAM, can you interface with the cleaning bots and shut them down?" "Negative, Professor. They're on an isolated network for security purposes. However," the mechanical student's optical sensors brightened. "I believe I can predict where your cat will go next based on her movement patterns. And I can help calm her down," Blip volunteered. "My species can modulate our light frequencies to produce soothing effects on most organisms. My spores can create a barrier to contain the cleaning bots," Frond added. "They won't be able to distinguish the chemical signatures from their regular obstacles." Thomas looked at his students with pride. This was exactly the kind of problem-solving and cooperation the Academy was meant to foster, even if he'd never imagined it would be applied to catching his runaway cat. They put their plan into action. PAM calculated that Marmalade would eventually head for the highest point in the building, a very cat-like behavior, while Franz Spores created a fungal barrier that confused and redirected the cleaning bots. Blip and several other Luminarian students positioned themselves along the predicted route, creating a trail of soothing bioluminescence. It worked better than anyone expected. Within minutes, Marmalade emerged from a ceiling panel, following the gentle light pattern. She was still bristling, but her panic had subsided to mere annoyance. When she spotted Thomas, she marched right up to him and meowed demandingly, as if this had all been his fault. "Attention," the Academy AI announced. "Code Orange has been resolved. All students and faculty may resume normal activities. Maintenance crews, please report to all affected areas." The damage wasn't as bad as it could have been, but it would take days to clean up all of Fran's spores and repair the scattered cleaning bots. Principal Zixtal was surprisingly understanding about the whole thing, though they did suggest that future Bring Your Pet to School Day participants might want to stick to herbivores. The story spread quickly through the galactic education community. Within weeks, there were scientific papers analyzing Marmalade's performance, with particular focus on how a simple house cat had managed to outmaneuver state-of-the-art security systems. Several military contractors even reached out to Thomas about studying cat movement patterns for drone development. But the real change came in how his colleagues viewed Earth and its inhabitants. It's one thing to know intellectually that humans evolved on a death world alongside efficient predators. It's another thing entirely to watch a small orange cat turn an entire school upside down without even trying. The next year, when Bring Your Pet to School Day came around again, Thomas brought his goldfish instead. But his students never stopped asking about Marmalade, and the security footage of her adventure became required viewing in the Academy's xenobiology curriculum. As for Marmalade herself, she remained thoroughly unimpressed by her newfound fame. The day after her adventure, she went right back to sleeping in sunbeams and begging for treats. though Thomas swore she looked a bit smug whenever she heard the distant sound of cleaning bots scurrying away from her presence. In the end, it wasn't the most conventional way to promote interspecies understanding, but it certainly was effective. And if nothing else, it gave a whole generation of alien students a healthy respect for Earth's most dignified predator, the common house cat. 6 months after what became known as the Marmalade incident, Thomas found himself sitting in a very unexpected meeting at Galactic Education headquarters. "Let me get this straight," he said, staring at the holographic presentation floating above the conference table. "You want to implement mandatory Earth predator awareness training across all educational institutions in cooperative space?" Admiral Kevex, a towering arthropoid whose carapace bore the distinctive markings of the Galactic Defense Force, clicked their mandibles in affirmation. "The footage from your incident has made it clear that we've been dangerously underprepared for Earth fauna encounters." "It was just a house cat," Thomas protested weakly, but he already knew it was a losing battle. The presentation currently showed a frame-by-frame analysis of Marmalade performing what the military had termed a tactical vertical ascension maneuver. Or as Thomas called it, jumping on a bookshelf. Just a house cat that evaded 12 security drones, disabled 27 cleaning robots, and successfully navigated a complex three-dimensional environment while under pursuit, countered Dr. Lumi, a Luminarian researcher who had apparently devoted the last 6 months to studying the incident footage. Their bioluminescent form pulsed with academic excitement. "The implications for defensive architecture alone are staggering." Thomas pinched the bridge of his nose. "So what exactly are you proposing?" The answer came in the form of a thick data packet titled The Marmalade Protocol, Comprehensive Guidelines for Earth Predator Containment and Response. As Thomas scrolled through it, his eyes widened. They had categorized every single movement Marmalade had made during her rampage, cross-referenced it with known feline behaviors, and developed an entire tactical response system. There were architectural recommendations, no exposed ventilation ducts, security protocols, all drones to be equipped with catnip dispensers, and even a psychological analysis of typical Earth predator motivation patterns. "We'd like you to oversee the implementation," Admiral Kevex announced, "starting with a pilot program at the Interspecies Academy." "You can't be serious." "Oh, but we are." Dr. Lumi's glow shifted to a determined blue. "Your Academy's unique incident has highlighted a critical gap in our preparedness. What if someone had brought a larger Earth predator? A dog, perhaps?" Several officials shuddered at the mention of dogs. Ever since humanity had joined the Galactic Cooperative, their canine companions had been a source of both fascination and terror for other species. The idea that humans regularly kept wolf descendants as pets had sparked more than one diplomatic incident. "Fine," Thomas sighed, "but I have some conditions." Which was how, 2 weeks later, Thomas found himself standing in front of the Academy's assembled faculty and staff, conducting what had to be the galaxy's first official Earth Pet Safety Seminar. Now, as you can see from this diagram, he gestured to a hologram showing Marmalade's infamous ceiling panel escape. Earth predators have evolved to take advantage of three-dimensional space in ways that our standard security systems aren't designed to handle. Professor Nintic raised a crystalline appendage. "But why do humans even keep such creatures in their dwellings? Surely there are safer companion options." "Actually," Thomas clicked to the next slide, which showed a collection of Earth pets. "Cats and dogs are considered some of our tamer options. Some humans keep constrictors as pets." The resulting wave of horror was so intense that the Academy's empathic sensors triggered the calming atmosphere generators. "Moving on," Thomas hastily switched slides. "Let's discuss the new security measures being implemented under the Marmalade Protocol." The changes were comprehensive, to say the least. Every ventilation duct was being retrofitted with quick seal panels. The cleaning bot AI was being updated with specific Earth predator avoidance protocols. Even the cafeteria was being redesigned to eliminate potential tactical advantage points, though Thomas suspected that was less about cats and more about the time a visiting student's pet hamster had orchestrated a great escape through the soup dispensers. The most amusing addition was the mandatory Earth predator encounter drills. Thomas had tried explaining that fire drills were probably more important, but the administration had insisted. Now, once a month, the entire Academy had to practice their response to simulated Earth pet incidents. "Remember," he told his increasingly nervous audience, "the key is not to panic. Most Earth pets are more afraid of you than you are of them." "That's not very reassuring," muttered someone in the back. The real test came 3 months later, when the Academy hosted the Galactic Youth Science Fair. Students from across cooperative space arrived with their projects, their parents, and, inevitably, their pets. Thomas spent the entire week on high alert, constantly checking the new security systems and making sure all Earth pets were properly registered and contained. He had to admit, the Marmalade Protocol's classification system was impressively thorough. Every creature was rated based on its mobility, problem-solving capabilities, and what the military termed chaos potential. Things were going smoothly until day 3, when a human student named Michael arrived with his project on electromagnetic field manipulation. And his pet. What do you mean it's a ferret? Principal Zixtal's antennae were practically tied in knots. The Marmalade Protocol doesn't have a ferret classification. It's like a cat, but longer, Thomas explained, watching the creature in question performing acrobatic feats in its reinforced carrier. And possibly smarter. Smarter than the one that reprogrammed our cleaning bots? Well, they didn't have to wait long to find out. Despite the new security measures, despite the drills, despite everything the Marmalade Protocol had prepared them for, nobody was ready for what a bored ferret could accomplish with access to an electromagnetic field generator. The resulting chaos involved floating furniture, magnetized cleaning bots forming what PAM termed a collective consciousness, and the ferret somehow managing to turn the anti-gravity generators into what amounted to a giant playground. At least the containment protocols worked, Thomas offered weakly, watching as the ferret orchestrated what appeared to be a synchronized swimming routine with levitating chairs in the main atrium. Principal Zixtal's antennae drooped. We're going to need a protocol update, aren't we? Look on the bright side, Thomas said, ducking as a magnetically propelled wastebasket zoomed overhead. At least nobody brought a raccoon. The mere mention of raccoons caused several nearby faculty members to emit distress pheromones. There were some Earth creatures that the galaxy just wasn't ready for. In the end, the ferret incident led to another round of security upgrades and a complete revision of the Marmalade Protocol, now expanded to include a comprehensive database of Earth pets and their various tactical capabilities. Thomas was asked to contribute to the new guidelines, though he drew the line at helping develop countermeasures for gerbils. The story of the original Marmalade incident lived on, passed down through generations of Academy students. Some said that on quiet nights, you could still hear cleaning bots nervously skittering away from any orange-colored objects. Others claimed that Marmalade's escape route had been immortalized in the Academy's architectural plans as an example of predicted chaos vectors. And somewhere in the vast bureaucracy of the Galactic Defense Force, there was now a file labeled Earth Felidae, Tactical Analysis and Threat Assessment. At the top, stamped in red, was a simple warning. Never underestimate anything humans consider cute. As for Thomas, he kept a framed copy of the original Marmalade Protocol on his classroom wall. Next to it was a photo of Marmalade, sleeping peacefully in a sunbeam, looking about as threatening as a stuffed toy. It served as a daily reminder that sometimes the best cultural exchange happened not through careful planning and protocols, but through the chaos that only an ordinary house cat could create. And if anyone asked about bringing their pet rabbit to the next science fair, well, that was covered under Section 7 of the protocol, Deceptively Harmless Earth Creatures and How to Contain Them. The galaxy might never be quite ready for Earth pets, but at least now they had a manual. The Council of Galactic Education cordially invites you to serve as Chief Security Consultant for the first annual Interspecies Companion Exhibition. Thomas read aloud, his voice echoing in Principal Zixtal's office. They can't be serious. Oh, they're very serious. The principal's antennae twitched with what Thomas had learned to recognize as barely suppressed amusement. After the success of the Marmalade Protocol, you've become something of an expert in interspecies pet management. Thomas lowered the invitation and stared at his superior. The Marmalade Protocol wasn't a success. It was damage control after my cat turned the Academy upside down. And let's not forget the ferret incident. Precisely! Principal Zixtal's carapace gleamed with enthusiasm. Who better to oversee security at a galactic pet show than the human who's survived not one, but 2 Earth Predator incidents? Which was how Thomas found himself standing in the Grand Exhibition Hall of New Venus, surrounded by the most diverse collection of companion creatures ever assembled in cooperative space. The exhibition was meant to foster understanding between species by showcasing their various approaches to animal companionship. In theory, it was a noble goal. In practice, what do you mean the Jovians brought a sentient gas cloud as a pet? Thomas pressed his communicator closer to his ear, trying to hear over the cacophony of various species' distress calls. No, don't put it near the Martian plasma moths. Haven't you read Appendix C of the protocol? atmospheric companions and their containment requirements. It was only day one of the week-long exhibition, and Thomas was already developing a twitch in his left eye. The Marmalade Protocol, for all its thoroughness, hadn't quite prepared them for the sheer variety of creatures that qualified as pets across the galaxy. The Andromedans had brought what appeared to be miniature black holes on leashes. The Centaurians were showcasing their famous quantum uncertainty pets, which existed in multiple states simultaneously until observed. And the Neptunian delegation had arrived with what they described as time parasites, creatures that fed on wasted minutes and could apparently make Monday mornings last forever. "Professor Thomas!" PAM's familiar mechanical voice cut through the chaos. His former student had volunteered to help with the exhibition security systems, along with several other Academy alumni. "We have a situation in Sector 7. "When don't we have a situation?" Thomas muttered, but he was already heading that way. "What is it this time?" "The Syrian hive mind hamsters have established a telepathic link with the Earth gerbils." Thomas stopped dead in his tracks. "They've what?" "Initial analysis suggests they're sharing escape strategies," PAM continued, their optical sensors whirring with calculation. "The gerbils are teaching them Earth rodent techniques, while the hive mind is helping them optimize their coordination." This was exactly the sort of scenario that kept xenobiologists up at night. Earth rodents were already masters of escape. Giving them access to hive mind capabilities was like giving a supercomputer to a master lockpick. "Implement protocol subsection R17, Thomas ordered, pulling up the emergency procedures on his tablet. "And get me Blip and Frond. We're going to need their specific talents again." The next few hours were a blur of activity as they worked to contain what the official report would later term the Great Rodent Revolution of 2286. The Luminarian's soothing light frequencies proved effective at disrupting the telepathic link, while Frond's spores created a maze-like barrier that even enhanced rodent intelligence couldn't navigate. But that was just the beginning. Over the next few days, Thomas and his team dealt with a temporal incident involving a Terran puppy, 3 quantum uncertainty pets, and a time parasite that somehow resulted in the same game of fetch repeating for 6 hours. A diplomatic crisis when the Andromedan black hole pets developed a taste for the Jovian gas cloud companions. An attempted uprising by a coalition of Earth parrots and Venusian mimics who had learned to imitate security override codes. A nearly successful prison break orchestrated by the combined efforts of Earth raccoons and Martian puzzle solvers. The exhibition's security logs would later be studied as both a warning and a masterclass in interspecies crisis management. The updated version of the Marmalade Protocol doubled in size, with entire new sections dedicated to cross-species communication prevention and temporal paradox management in multi-pet environments. But the real breakthrough came on the final day, during what was supposed to be a simple demonstration of Earth pet training techniques. Thomas had brought Marmalade, yes, that Marmalade, to demonstrate the basics of human-feline interaction. Despite concerns from the security team and the addition of no less than 50 new emergency protocols, he felt it was important to show that the infamous catalyst of the original protocol was, in fact, just a regular cat. The demonstration was going smoothly until one of the Neptunian time parasites escaped its containment field. The creature, described as looking like a cross between a sundial and a jellyfish, began feeding on the audience's perception of time, creating localized temporal distortions. Before anyone could react, Marmalade simply got up from her cushion, walked over to the time parasite, and sat on it. The entire exhibition hall fell silent. "Fascinating," declared the head of the Neptunian delegation. "Your Earth Predator appears to have normalized the temporal field simply by imposing its own perception of time on the parasite." "No," Thomas replied, watching Marmalade begin to groom herself while maintaining her position on the trapped time parasite. "She just really likes sitting on things that move." The incident led to an entirely new field of study, biotemporal physics, or as Thomas preferred to call it, why cats do what cats do. It turned out that Earth felines possessed an innate ability to manipulate localized spacetime, which explained both their apparent disregard for physics and their tendency to appear in places they couldn't possibly have reached. The exhibition, despite, or perhaps because of, its many incidents, was hailed as a tremendous success. Species that had never understood each other's approach to companionship began to find common ground. The Andromedans discovered that their black hole pets shared many characteristics with Earth cats, particularly their tendency to ignore their owners and knock things into another dimension. The Martian puzzle solvers and Earth parrots formed an intellectual exchange program. Even the Jovian gas clouds found kindred spirits in Earth goldfish, leading to the galaxy's first atmospheric aquarium. When it was all over, Thomas returned to the academy with a commendation from the council, 17 new additions to the protocol, and a newfound appreciation for the complexity of interspecies pet relationships. You know, Principal Zixtal commented during their post-exhibition debrief, they're already talking about making this an annual event. Thomas looked up from his tablet, where he was reviewing the final incident report. Please tell me you're joking. Not at all. In fact, they're considering expanding it to include a competitive element next year. Something about an intergalactic best in show. Thomas thought about the logistics of organizing a pet show where some of the contestants existed in quantum superposition, and others could literally eat time. He thought about the potential chaos of Earth hamsters teaching spatial geometry to Syrian hive minds, and raccoons exchanging problem-solving techniques with aliens who thought opposable thumbs were a superpower. Then he thought about Marmalade, who had single-handedly launched this entire saga and was probably at home right now, sleeping in a sunbeam, completely unaware of her status as a galactic legend. Well, he said finally, at least it won't be boring. Principal Zixtal's antennae wiggled in what might have been either agreement or alarm. Should I start drafting the insurance paperwork now? Better make it a temporal insurance policy, Thomas advised, just in case. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, in offices and homes and spacecraft across the galaxy, beings of all species were learning an important lesson about the nature of pets, chaos, and the peculiar magic that happened when different worlds collided. They were also learning, much to the dismay of security forces everywhere, that some things, like the determined escape artist nature of Earth rodents, or the physics-defying capabilities of cats, were truly universal constants. The Marmalade Protocol continued to evolve, growing from a simple security measure into a comprehensive guide to interspecies understanding. And if sometimes, late at night, the Academy's cleaning bots still took the long way around to avoid the spot where a certain orange cat had once caused chaos, well, some legends never die. As for the next exhibition, well, that's another story entirely. The quantum physics department wants to borrow your cat. Thomas looked up from his grating to find Dr. Loomy hovering in his office doorway, their bioluminescence pulsing with barely contained excitement. Absolutely not, he replied immediately. But Professor, after the time parasite incident at the exhibition, we've detected some fascinating temporal anomalies around Earth felines. Your Marmalade, in particular, seems to exhibit unprecedented capabilities in manipulating local space-time. She's not manipulating space-time, Thomas insisted. She's just being a cat. Exactly, Dr. Loomy's glow intensified. That's what makes it so remarkable. Earth felines appear to instinctively understand and exploit quantum mechanics in ways our most advanced scientists are only beginning to grasp. Did you know we've recorded instances of Marmalade existing in multiple locations simultaneously? That's called looking for treats in every room at once. It's not quantum mechanics, it's just being food-motivated. But the quantum physics department wouldn't be deterred. Over the next few weeks, Thomas found himself fielding increasingly elaborate requests from scientists across the galaxy who wanted to study Marmalade's apparent ability to bend the laws of physics. The breaking point came when he discovered a team of Centaurian researchers attempting to calculate what they termed the quantum probability state of feline napping locations by setting up observation equipment around his apartment. This has got to stop, he announced during an emergency meeting with Principal Zixtal and the Academy's board of directors. My cat is not a research subject. But the implications, began Professor Nuntik, their crystalline form vibrating with academic fervor. The implications are that we're spending more time studying my house cat than teaching our students, Thomas interrupted. And speaking of students, has anyone noticed what's been happening in the dormitories? The room fell silent. Everyone knew what he was referring to. Ever since the exhibition, there had been a marked increase in what the Marmalade Protocol classified as unauthorized cross-species pet adoption incidents. It had started innocently enough. A human student sharing their dorm with a Jovian had somehow taught their hamster to play with the Jovian's pet gas cloud. A Martian puzzle solver had formed an unlikely friendship with an Earth student's guinea pig. And then things had escalated. According to the latest report, Thomas continued, pulling up the data on his tablet, we currently have 3 quantum uncertainty gerbils, a telepathic goldfish, and at least 1 hamster that may or may not have achieved time travel. Principal Zixtal's antennae drooped. How did this happen? The same way everything happens at this academy. Students being students. They saw all these different species pets at the exhibition and started wondering what would happen if they combined certain traits. The real question is, what are we going to do about it? The answer came from an unexpected source. PAM, who had been quietly monitoring the Academy's security systems, spoke up from their terminal. Analysis suggests that attempting to prevent cross-species pet interactions is both inefficient and counterproductive. Recommendation: establish a formal framework for supervised pet integration studies. And that was how the Academy's newest department was born. The Center for Interspecies Companion Integration and Development, or CICID. Thomas, much to his chagrin, was appointed as its first director. Think of it as an opportunity, Principal Zixtal said encouragingly. We can channel all this experimental energy into something productive. The center's first major project was addressing what had become known as the temporal pet paradox, the tendency of Earth pets to cause temporal anomalies when exposed to certain alien technologies. It started with a simple observation. Earth cats weren't just sitting on time parasites, they were actively normalizing temporal distortions wherever they went. Dogs, meanwhile, seemed to exist in their own temporal bubble where it was always time for walks or dinner. And nobody could quite explain how hamsters managed to cover so much ground in seemingly impossible timeframes. The problem, explained Dr. Lumi during one of the center's research sessions, is that we've been trying to understand Earth pets through the lens of our own physics. But what if they operate on an entirely different set of natural laws? They don't, Thomas insisted. They're just pets. But even he had to admit there was something strange going on when Marmalade apparently managed to be asleep on his desk, hunting a laser pointer in the lab and stealing treats from the cafeteria all at the same time. Quantum superposition, declared the Centaurian researchers. She's just a very efficient cat, Thomas maintained. The breakthrough came from an unlikely source, the Academy's maintenance staff. After years of dealing with Earth pets, they had developed their own informal classification system for what they termed pet-induced reality fluctuations. See, it's all about perspective, explained Head of Maintenance Bot Operations, Unit 2187. Earth pets don't break physics. They just have a different understanding of what's possible. Our cleaning bots learn to adapt by not trying to apply standard spatial algorithms to Earth creature movements. This simple observation led to a complete overhaul of how the galaxy approached interspecies pet studies. Instead of trying to force Earth pets to conform to known physical laws, researchers began studying how they naturally navigated reality. The results were revolutionary. The Marmalade Protocol was updated with an entirely new section on reality-adjacent pet behaviors and their implementation. The Quantum Physics Department developed what they called Schrödinger's cat navigation systems, based on feline spatial awareness. And the Academy's architecture was redesigned to accommodate what they now understood wasn't chaos, but simply a different way of interacting with space-time. Of course, there were still incidents. The week when all the Earth hamsters temporarily achieved collective consciousness thanks to exposure to Syrian hive mind frequencies was particularly memorable. And nobody quite knew what to do about the guinea pig that had apparently learned to communicate with quantum uncertainty pets and was now giving physics lectures. But overall, the center was a success. Students learned valuable lessons about different species' approaches to companionship. Researchers made groundbreaking discoveries in cross-species interaction, and the cleaning bots finally developed algorithms that could predict Earth pet behavior with 67% accuracy, up from their previous 3%. Thomas even found himself enjoying his new role, though he drew the line at the Quantum Physics Department's request to install reality monitors in Marmalade's litter box. Some things, he insisted, should remain mysteries. The real test came during the Academy's first Interspecies Pet Integration Festival. Students and faculty brought their companions, both traditional and hybrid, to showcase the results of their supervised integration studies. There were floating dogs, a collaboration between Earth and Jovian pet specialists. Telepathic fish tanks. Somebody had finally figured out what goldfish were thinking about, and it was mostly food. And even a demonstration of what happened when you taught Earth rabbits to use Andromedan spatial portals. Thomas nodded, absently petting Marmalade, who was somehow managing to simultaneously nap in 5 different sunbeams while maintaining quantum entanglement with a Neptunian time parasite. Neither did I, he admitted. But maybe that's the point. Sometimes the best discoveries happen when we stop trying to explain everything, and just accept that the universe is stranger than we imagine. And cats are stranger than we can comprehend? Principal Zixtal suggested. Exactly. As if to prove his point, Marmalade chose that moment to defy several fundamental laws of physics by appearing instantly at the sound of a treat bag being opened 3 floors away. Should we add that to the protocol? The principal asked. Thomas just smiled. Some things, he had learned, were better left unprotocoled. The end.